welcome to Fan vs. Fan. We're talking Game of Thrones Season 5, Episode 3.
I'm Peter Counter.
And I'm Elena Lowe.
Let's get started.
You loved your family. Avenge them.
You, who walk in here with a coin you never earned. Who are you?
What do you want from us?
Justice.
You have many enemies in Castle Black.
And you're prepared for the consequences.
All men must serve.
This episode on Game of Thrones, Arya receives training in the art of menial tasks.
Jon and Stannis become bros, but will Stannis finally be able to put bros before hoes?
Answer that, probably not. Marjorie and Tommen then get married, making us wonder whether the title of this show should be 4 Weddings and a Countless Amount of Funerals.
And Baelish gives Sansa an offer she absolutely should refuse.
Off the top of the show, we're talking dragon eggs, and this is the part where we discuss the callbacks that the show is doing to events and people that you may have forgotten about. First up is Jorah. You may have forgotten him because you may have nicknamed him Friendzone Knight. He was Dany's beloved. He thought he wanted to be Dany's beloved, and he was the knight that was her best friend and gave her the best advice at that time. So now he's just hanging out in brothels. I don't know what he's doing there. Maybe, possibly engaging in sexual contact with the lady that looks like Dany. We don't know. We don't know what's happening.
Maybe he's into cosplay.
Maybe. And yeah, so now he's just hanging out looking for opportunities to get back in Dany's good graces. And he found Tyrion, which is the perfect opportunity to go back to Meereen and win her over.
Definitely. Jon Snow cut a guy's head off. Whose head was it? It was Janos Slynt, who you most likely remember from recent episodes as being a mega coward, cowering in a cellar during the Battle of the Wall.
In a puddle of his own making, apparently. So you know that smelled good.
Exactly.
Yep. But when did we first see him, Peter?
We first saw him in Season 1. He was the commander of the Gold Cloaks.
Yep.
And and he betrayed Ned Stark, who, of course, infamously had his head chopped off. So there's a lot of poetic justice in the end that met Janos Slynt. Additionally, one of the first scenes of the show is Ned Stark beheading a deserter of the Wall and teaching his sons, including Jon, that if you're going to be a leader, you got to be tough but fair. And that's what we saw from Jon. We saw a callback. He's tough but fair, and he got Stannis' approval.
Which, that was just such a beautiful moment too. Like, just when Stannis was on that balcony, just kind of like looking out, and like he said so much with just his eyes. Like, you can just kind of tell that it was just like, I approve of everything you're doing.
Yeah.
And like, I have like deep masculine emotions for you. I mean, like, I might be reading into it, but it certainly seems that that's exactly what he was trying to say.
He truly embodied a fatherly pat on the back.
Yeah, it was great. It was great. And I was going to say, it was also a nice little moment for Jon to just be like, I'm kind of a man now. And it was just metaphorically a nice little mic drop. I feel like he's had a lot of those moments.
Yeah.
And one of the last Easter eggs is Qyburn. We mentioned him in our last episode, but here he is doing experimenting, deep, dark, terrible things to rats in this episode. And there's also a creature underneath a sheet in this episode. And I think we can almost certainly say it's the Mountain.
Yeah, it's the first time we've been back in Qyburn's lab and sort of received an update on his ongoing project to build the $6 million mountain.
And what do you think the Mountain's first line is going to be, Peter, when he does wake up?
I don't know what it's going to be, but I hope it's sorry that I killed your favorite character in a really brutal, traumatic way.
See, unfortunately, I think his first line is just going to be like, I want to kill more sexy princes. I mean, like, I don't know, but I feel like that's That's what I would want him to say. Is just more sexy prince murder.
I think you're more accurate than me, but I choose to be hopeful.
Yeah. So, Peter, what were your pros this episode? This
episode, I was really excited to finally get to Winterfell. We've seen through the opening titles in the past few episodes that it's been rebuilt and is flying the flayed man banner of House Bolton. We finally get to see it again, and there's something again really poetic about going back to Winterfell and seeing Theon Greyjoy, now Reek, actually in just a much worse situation than he was in, but it's still very similar to how he started off. He used to complain about how he was just sort of a prisoner of war and a slave to the Starks, and now he's back there, and his old complaints seem a little bit less valid now that he has been turned into a human dog. So there's something like kind of darkly, I don't want to say humorous because it makes me sound like a terrible person, but there's something kind of funny about it. And
Flaying. Do you have any other pros, Peter?
Yeah, I also really like everything that's been happening at the Wall all season. This episode really continued that. I love seeing Jon Snow finally be a leader and like really take his confidence. I feel like ever since he went out beyond the Wall to talk to Mance Rayder, he's come back a changed man. And like I feel the Jon Snow of previous seasons would have jumped at Stannis's offer. Maybe not jumped, but he would have been more into it. And now I can finally be like, yeah, that's
someone you can be proud of
decision,
too.
John.
Yeah. And I think too, like in the past, John was very much like this like emo little boy that would just like be sitting in a corner just listening to Dashboard Confessional of like, I'm not accepted by my family.
Yeah.
And just kind of like focusing on himself and being really selfish. And now instead of kind of taking the thing that he wanted the most for so long, he's just kind of thinking about the greater picture.
Right.
Like what's best for the North.
Exactly.
And for the world, really.
Well, yeah, and he used to want to be Jon Stark, and he kind of still does, but I think now he's finally been like, I'm all right with who I am. What were some of the things you liked about this episode?
One of the things that I really loved most about this episode was just the ladies getting these super complex dynamics with other characters. And one of my favorite bits was learning about Brienne's backstory. Definitely. Because for so long, she's just been this very loyal, very skilled character. And we know that she cares about Renly a lot, that she really cared about Catelyn, but we didn't really understand her motivation of like why she's so incredibly devoted to these people. And I think hearing about the Renly story really made me understand and really like her way more than I already did. Mm-hmm. And I loved her relationship with Pod. Definitely. I also really liked Arya kind of forming a relationship with Jaqen. And he's no hound. But who can be the new hound. But I really liked their relationship, and I liked her being pushed to her limits. Mm-hmm. I also really liked the scene where she kind of buries Needle. I don't know what she was trying to do. Maybe she's trying to grow a sword tree.
That's
seems implausible, but who knows what can happen in Game of Thrones. And also one other thing about Brienne too is I love that Pod finally was just like, oh yeah, smoke monster, that makes sense. Instead of literally everyone who was like, you're a crazy lady. Like, yeah, like we have like people coming back to life. We have dragons, but like for some unknown reason, everyone that we hear Brienne's story would be like, oh, she's just on her period. Like she's like, come on, like just believe her. So it was so nice to have like her finally validated. So that was a great moment.
Not to mention Gwendolyn Christie act the hell out of that scene.
So, Peter, what were your cons for this episode? It was a great episode, but what were some cons for you?
Well, you're right. It is a great episode. I only have one con, and it was the scene between Cersei and Marjorie. after the wedding night between Marjorie and Tommen. I found the tone of that scene really confusing, and I think that it's because the intentions of the characters are very conflicting on both sides. On one hand, there is this very strong implication that they both absolutely hate each other, but they're restrained through this sort of social appearances that they have to uphold. But on the other hand, Cersei kept saying to Marjorie, if you need anything, I'll give it to you. And it felt very sincere. So at the end, I didn't really know who won the scene. But when we got the shot of Cersei walking away, it was very clear that she thought she won the scene. And so I didn't know if I was watching a fight or if I was watching nothing.
Yeah, I was just very confused as to whether Cersei, during that whole exchange, was basically saying, I'm coming for you. I'm coming for you.
Right.
Or whether she was actually afraid that she would be sent away by Tommen, so she was trying to gain favor with Marjorie. It was just all very confusing. I didn't really know where the characters stood. So, yeah.
That's right. It did come off of those, weird semi-threats from Tommen to send her back to Castle the Rock. So, it's one of those things that might make more sense once we figure out where it's going.
So, my cons, I know that you'll strongly disagree with this, but my con was the entire Bolton storyline.
I just love them.
I think I find the characters fascinating because they're so awful and they're such great villains. But at the same time, that whole storyline just, to me, was a little confusing and also, of course, disgusting. I thought Peter's offer to Sansa just didn't really make sense to me because he was saying, you gotta stop running. You have to stop running. And you gotta stop running and then marry this dude that murdered your entire family. It just didn't seem like a good offer. I was just okay, let's stop running, but why do you have to do this? Why couldn't you do a multitude of other moves that are way more beneficial than you marrying a psychopath? It just didn't... I want Sansa to take control of her life, but that seems like a strange move to her. And I thought the whole storyline was just, I just hate them so much.
Yeah, and
so
you're right. It was a really difficult, hard sell on Baelish's part, where he just lists all of the negatives, and he's like, "Yes, this is
best
bad.
decision ever.
You're
for
probably
some
gonna
reason.
hate it, but I'm doing it for your own good."
It's just you just come on.
Yeah, it's
come
you'll grow to love this.
Yeah, you'll grow to love just seeing corpses everywhere. You'll look so beautiful next to these flayed bodies. Is that the main positive?
Have you looked at their banner? It's repulsive at first, but spend some time with it.
That's your color. Red's your color, right?
Yeah, it used to be.
So so that was my main con. Is just Peter Baelish and Bolton's. And now we have to discuss our biggest con of all. This was an issue last episode. It's still an issue now. And that's Sir Pounce. Where is he? I mean, that bedroom scene between Marjorie and Tommen, it was almost ruined by the fact that there was no cat scurrying about. It was very upsetting.
Here's the thing about Sir Pounce. He works in the bedroom. Stole the show last season. And to bring us back there and... not have Sir Pounce.
It's such a tease. It was just awful. Start his own Twitter account. That's what he needs to do. Start his own Twitter account, get a better agent, and get it in their next episode. So We'll have to see how that goes.
I would be happy even if they recast. We've seen other recasting throughout the show with Dario, with the Mountain a few times.
Maricel's been aged up for this season. I mean, come on, you can get a friggin' cat in there. So. Yeah, so Pounce Watch 2015. We'll update you next episode. Well, that's it for us this week, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for Fan vs. Fan, where we discussed Game of Thrones Season 5, Episode 3. I'm Elena Lowe.
I'm Peter Counter.
And what you can do now is tweet at us using the hashtag Fan vs. Fan, or you can follow us on Twitter at Dorkshelf.
Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can see all the episodes. And be sure to leave comments. Let us know what you like, what you don't like. We read them all. We might read some of them in future episodes.
Yep, that's it for us. See you guys next week.
Kicked him out.